Section 6. A survival value for qualia. As we have seen, one answer has been to simply deny point blank that qualia exist. We have now provided the behavioral flexibility theory to explain why qualia should have evolved. Why has this been missed? I think because conventional theorists have assumed that an explanation for qualia and consciousness must involve directly contributing to one or more behavioral functions. Humphrey has identified this as the Achilles heel of many consciousness theories. The behavioral flexibility theory, however, does not fall into this trap. Rather than a direct functional role, it posits instead that learning and behavioral flexibility are the purpose of qualia and consciousness. Qualia fulfill this role, as per Panksepp, by providing an in-depth internal reaction to the consequences of behavioral outcomes. The qualia of outcomes are then linked by experience to Panksepp's pre-given range of emotional reactions, thus providing the rewards and punishments which guide future behavior, otherwise known as learning. The only exception to these conclusions about the role of qualia in action would be the behavior of a zombie. As Gray says, quote, "This is a philosophical invention intended to cover the possibility that there may exist beings which act just like humankind but do not experience any qualia. It is a stark illustration of our lack of understanding of the functions of consciousness that no one is at present sure whether zombies could or could not exist in reality. That is to say, we do not have a theory from which it can be deduced what kinds, if any, of information processing or behavior could or could not be executed in the absence of qualia." End quote. And in fact, Gray reiterates that experimental evidence indicates that the brain can do an awful lot without qualia. Quote, "That eliminates a lot of possibilities that common sense otherwise finds very appealing. We don't, for example, need qualia in order to act swiftly, to act voluntarily, to sense stimuli across the gamut of our sensory modalities, to extract meaningful categories from stimuli, to react emotionally, to solve problems, to learn or to remember." End quote. Gray then asks the classic question which has dogged the notion of qualia ever since this sort of experimental evidence has started to accumulate. Quote, "So what do qualia do? What do they do, moreover, that could have conferred upon them sufficient survival value for them to have evolved?" End quote. David Chalmers asks the same question, though perhaps in a more vivid and comprehensive way. Quote, "Why is it that when our cognitive systems engage in visual and auditory information processing, we have visual or auditory experience? The quality deep blue, the sensation of middle C. Why should physical processing give rise to a rich inner life at all? When we visually perceive the world, we do not just process information. We have a subjective experience of color, shape, and depth. We have experiences associated with other senses. think of auditory experiences of music or the ineffable nature of smell experiences with bodily sensations, e.g., pains, tickles, and orgasms, with mental imagery, e.g., the colored shapes that appear when one rubs one's eyes, with emotion, the sparkle of happiness, the intensity of anger, the weight of despair, and with the stream of conscious thought. What we have a sense of experiencing is the central fact about the mind, but it is also the most mysterious. Why should a physical system, no matter how complex and well organized, give rise to experience at all? Why is it that all this processing does not go on in the dark without any subjective quality?" End quote. Minsky answers these questions in a fairly standard reductive cognitive science way. Quote, "Chalmers seems to assume that experiencing is quite plain and direct and therefore merits a simple, compact explanation. However, once we recognize that terms like experience or inner life refer to big suitcases of different phenomena, we can start to make theories about each of those separate phenomena. However, it seems to me that the mysteries that Chalmers sees result from squeezing multiple mental activities into suitcase words like subjective, sensations, and consciousness. Our higher level processes cannot detect intermediate steps, and this lack of insight leads us to the belief that our sensations come to us in some way that is simple, direct, and immediate." End quote. Minsky gives the examples of being touched or seeing red. You have an immediate sense of feeling the touch and seeing red without the intervention of any complex processing. This explains why many people deny that any mechanical processes can explain why different stimuli seem each to have the particular qualities that they do.